Hey, you finally found what you were looking for. As you listen to my voice and feel the gentle frequencies in the background, you'll notice your body beginning to sink deeper into your bed. Each breath slower, each muscle softer, and with every word, your thoughts become quieter. You can let go now. You can rest. This is your journey. Welcome to Dreams of Duty. Now, before we begin this journey, take a moment just to breathe. Breathe in slowly. Feel the air fill your chest and breathe out, letting everything go. Again, breathe in and breathe out. Each time, a little deeper, a little calmer. With every breath, your body softens, your thoughts drift further away, and the world outside becomes distant and quiet. You are safe here. You are calm. You are ready to dream. It's a cold, chilly morning on October 10th, 1943. Pilot Robert Rosie Rosenthal pulls his flight jacket tighter, shivering slightly as he steps onto the frost-covered tarmac. The air smells of fuel, oil, and the faint tang of damp earth. He watches as mechanics make their final checks on the rows of B-17 bombers lined up like steel sentinels, their silver fuselages gleaming under the weak morning sunday. The sound of engines warming up mixes with distant shouts and clanging tools, forming a mechanical symphony that resonates across the airfield. Inside the briefing room, the cold seeps through the thin walls, but the tension is palpable. 60 pilots and navigators sit silently, faces etched with concentration and fear, eyes fixed on Major John Egan as he steps to the front. The smell of cold metal and stale coffee lingers in the air, mingling with the faint scent of newspapers and oil-stained uniforms. "All right, let's get this over with," Major Egan begins, his voice steady but carrying the weight of unspoken grief. "Light, your target today is Munster. So far, our targets have been factories, but not this time. Today, the aim point is the Old Town Cathedral." A murmur spreads like a ripple across the room, a mixture of shock and disbelief. Some men exchange uneasy glances, others simply stare down at their boots. Lewis and Bailey, Rosenthal's trusted co-pilot and navigator, share a brief, stunned look. Fear is there, yes, but also a sense of duty. "Yes!" Major Egan's voice breaks through the tension, loud and commanding, trying to galvanize the men for the task ahead. His eyes are hard, but behind them, there's a shadow of sorrow. Many in the room have lost close friends on previous missions. Their pain has hardened them, but it has also sharpened their sense of resolve. Rosenthal runs through his mental checklist: fuel pressure, oil pressure, looking good. He taps the cockpit panel absent-mindedly, a nervous habit, and feels the reassuring weight of the controls beneath his hands. Outside the windows, sunlight flickers off the polished metal of the bombers, glinting like tiny stars scattered across the earth. Munster is home to a large proportion of railway workers, a fellow pilot whispers, breaking the tense silence. They're crucial for the German war effort. Rosenthal swallows hard. We're gonna be there right in time for Sunday Mass. I don't know how I feel about it, Pappy Lewis admits, his voice low, almost a confession. Come on, Pappy, you know it's our duty, Rosenthal replies, trying to mask the anxiety that gnaws at him. Outside, the B-17 seconds roar to life, their engines a deep, vibrating hum that resonates through the tarmac and into the bones of the men aboard. The Royal Flush takes her position at the very back of the formation, a place everyone knows is exposed, a position of particular danger. Rosenthal closes his eyes for a brief moment, centering himself. There's no time for fear, not yet. But it's not going to be any milk run, Rosenthal hears over the intercom. Intelligence reports over 500 fighters ready to intercept along our path. You can also expect extremely heavy flak over the target. You will be part of a 274 bomber formation. Major Egan will command the group. The bombers lift slowly, engines trembling with effort. The airfield falls away beneath them as they rise into the cold morning sky. Clouds drift lazily below, but they are a deceptive calm. Beyond them lies the enemy, waiting, ready. The flight over Holland is uneventful, serene even, a quiet lull before the storm. But tension thrums in every heartbeat. Rosenthal checks the instruments again and again, while Lewis hums softly to himself, a way to stave off panic. Then, as they approach Germany, anxiety turns to dread. "Where's our fighters?" Rosenthal mutters. The absence of P-47 Thunderbolt escorts leaves a gaping vulnerability. Eyes scan the horizon, but there's nothing. Not a speck of friendly aircraft. The men exchange worried glances. Suddenly, a cloud of enemy fighters appears in the distance. Mi-109 seconds and 4-190 seconds cut through the sky, swarming like predatory birds. Tracers crisscross the air as machine guns roar, the deafening sound reverberating inside the B-17's fuselage. "They are coming your way, Stanley," cries a fellow gunner. Explosions erupt around them, flak tearing apart the air. One by one, B-17 seconds are struck, smoke trailing as they falter. The Royal Flush, at the rear, witnesses friends and comrades consumed by fire. Flames lick the wings of nearby aircraft, black smoke spiraling upward. The men inside the Royal Flush move with grim determination. De Blasio, the rear gunner, unleashes a torrent of bullets, ripping apart incoming fighters. The cockpit shudders with every hit the bomber takes. Rosenthal and Lewis hold the controls tightly, guiding their damaged ship through the chaos, hearts pounding. "Bailey, how far to the target?" Rosenthal shouts over the roar. "Almost there," Bailey replies, eyes wide behind his goggles, fingers steady on the instruments. The cathedral looms below, an ancient monument amidst the devastation. The target approaches slowly, painfully slowly. Rosenthal fights to steady the plane, avoiding flak bursts while keeping the bomber on course. The bombs release, plunging toward Münster, a mechanical, precise fury raining down from the skies. The aftermath is immediate. Flames erupt from rooftops, the cathedral shattered by the payload. Smoke coils into the sky, mingling with the chaos of battle. The royal flush limps away, engines smoking, only 2 remaining functional. Every man aboard is aware that survival is far from guaranteed. Multiple German aircraft swarm their isolated bomber, each one a deadly predator. The crew fights with every ounce of strength left. Gunners fire relentlessly, bullets striking engines, wings, and fuselage. Explosions jolt the aircraft, sending shrapnel across the interior. Schaefer and other gunners are wounded, moaning in pain, but still holding on. Rosenthal makes a desperate choice. Evasive maneuvers unlike anything he has tried before. Barrel rolls, steep dives, climbing turns. Every action is precise, calculated to evade the swarm. Yet, each movement risks the lives of his crew. The remaining fighters peel away eventually, limited by fuel, leaving the royal flush alone in the sky. Silence falls, but it is tense. The calm after an inferno. The bomber, barely holding together, limps back toward Allied lines, engines straining, fuselage battered. From the tarmac at Thorpe Abbotts, mechanics and officers watch, breath held. A lone B-17 emerges on the horizon, smoke streaming, landing gear down. It touches down, rolling slowly to a stop. The gathered men are silent, shock etched across their faces. The crew climbs out, exhausted, bloodied, but alive. The realization hits them fully. The rest of the 100th did not return. The loss is staggering. Münster will never forget the morning sky above, nor the bravery of those who dared to fly through it. Rosenthal exhales, feeling the weight of the mission settle into his bones. There is no joy, no celebration, only survival, and the heavy, lingering burden of what they have witnessed. The air at Thorpe Abbotts was razor-sharp, cutting through the layers of flight jackets, scarves, and gloves the men wore. Frost crunched under the mechanics' boots as they scurried between the lined-up B-17 seconds, checking propellers, refueling tanks, inspecting each rivet for the smallest flaw that could turn deadly mid-air. Every plane's fuselage glistened with frost, every glass canopy streaked with condensation. Rosenthal exhaled, seeing his own breath mist in the cockpit as he ran through the pre-flight checks. He could hear Lewis murmuring to himself over the instruments: fuel gauges, oil pressure, engine temperature. Bailey sat hunched over the maps, tracing their flight path with a finger, memorizing turns, rivers, and towns, calculating where enemy fighters might intercept them. The men exchanged silent glances, tension unspoken but palpable. Pappy Lewis adjusted his headset, his eyes sharp, betraying the calm facade he presented. "Let's just get this over with," he said, though his tone hinted at nerves. Rosenthal nodded, his fingers tightening on the controls, feeling the smooth metal against his palms. The sound of engines warming up filled the tarmac. Other pilots called out status checks. Hydraulics clear, flaps operational, bomb bay doors primed. The roar built to a deafening crescendo as one by one, the B-17 seconds lifted from the runway. The royal flush, at the very back, rolled forward. Rosenthal's stomach tightened. The tail position was notoriously vulnerable, yet necessary for the integrity of the formation. Above them, a thin layer of mist clung to the horizon. The early sunlight fractured through clouds in slivers of gold, giving the frozen world a deceptively peaceful glow. In moments, the peaceful sky would become a battlefield. But for now, the calm allowed a brief, almost cruel sense of serenity. The men whispered small prayers, tightened straps, and focused on the meticulous rituals that had kept them alive this long. Major Egan inspected the planes from the ground, his sharp eyes noting even the smallest irregularities. The other pilots saluted him, but their expressions betrayed the weight of what they were about to undertake. The silence of the early morning air was a prelude, a deceptive calm that cloaked the storm to come. Rosenthal's hands moved automatically across the dials and switches. Bomb bay doors operational, oxygen pressure normal, fuel mixture optimal, he muttered. Lewis gave a thumbs up, and Bailey's gaze stayed fixed on the maps. In that moment, no one spoke of fear. The world beyond the cockpit didn't exist, only the mission. The B-17 seconds lifted as one, a synchronized ballet of metal and fire, engines screaming like beasts unleashed. The royal flush took its position at the rear, the weight of responsibility and vulnerability pressing down like a physical force. Rosenthal could feel every vibration in the control column, every tremor through the floor of the cockpit, a constant reminder that the aircraft, though sturdy, was still alive beneath them. Below, Holland spread like a patchwork quilt of green and brown, rivers glinting silver in the weak sunlight. It seemed peaceful, almost impossibly serene. Yet the men aboard knew this tranquility was a lie. Enemy fighters could appear at any moment, and every second of hesitation could be their last. Suddenly, the crackle of the radio cut through the cabin's hum. "Bandits, 12 o'clock high, intercepting." Rosenthal felt his stomach drop. Through the cockpit glass, dark shapes appeared. Me 109 seconds and Fu 190 seconds, slicing across the sky, perfectly coordinated deadly predators converging on their prey. The B-17 seconds, defensive guns roared, tracers streaking through the morning light, smoke curling upward in black tendrils. Explosions rocked the formation, each one shaking the fuselage, rattling instruments, and forcing men to cling to whatever they could hold. De Blasio, the rear gunner, opened fire, his .50 caliber guns spitting bullets with unrelenting ferocity. Sparks flew off the metal of enemy aircraft as rounds struck engines and fuselages. Each burst of fire was a gamble. Every shot could mean life or death. Around them, explosions turned the clouds into a chaotic ballet of smoke, fire, and falling metal. Inside the royal flush, the crew worked like clockwork. Left waist clear, shouted Rosenthal. "Right gun, hold steady." The cockpit was a frenzy of activity. Every man was a node in a network of survival, eyes darting from instruments to the enemy, hands operating weapons, controls, radios. 14190 came screaming at the tail. "He's on our 6!" shouted a gunner. Tracers met him, sparks flying as his plane wobbled, smoke trailing. De Blasio shifted aim seamlessly, unleashing another volley. The fighter spiraled out of control, crashing in a burst of flames behind them. Yet the danger never ceased. Rockets streaked past, flak exploded around them, shrapnel tore through the fuselage. "Engines 2 and 3 hit!" Lewis shouted. The vibration of the crippled engines shook the controls, forcing Rosenthal to fight to maintain altitude. "Hold her steady! Just a little more!" Bailey, gripping his charts and compass, called out every landmark, every deviation, every patch of anti-aircraft fire below. "We're over Münster in 5 minutes. Brace yourselves." The cathedral loomed in the distance, a silent sentinel over the city. Below, anti-aircraft guns began their relentless barrage, each explosion sending shockwaves through the fuselage. The Royal Flush was alone, the back of the formation peeling away in a chaotic swirl, as other B-17 seconds were hit or forced to break formation. Smoke and fire filled the air, where comrades once flew in perfect synchrony. The remaining 3 bombers, including the Royal Flush, were now isolated targets. Rosenthal fought to keep the plane steady. "Brace yourselves," he shouted. Lewis adjusted the throttles, balancing the damaged engines, while Bailey calculated the bombing run, voice steady, despite the roaring chaos around him. German fighters swooped in from every angle. Mi-109 seconds tore through the clouds. Fu-190 seconds strafed and launched rockets. The Royal Flush returned fire, machine guns blazing, tracer rounds cutting through the sky in bursts of orange and silver. Flak exploded all around, shaking the plane violently. One of the waist gunners screamed as shrapnel tore through the fuselage. Rosenthal dodged a near miss, twisting the plane left, then right, heart hammering. "We're losing altitude! Bombs away in 30 seconds!" The bomb bay doors creaked open, releasing the deadly cargo. Below, the cathedral and surrounding city were lit by the flashes of falling bombs, smoke rising in plumes. Rosenthal yanked the plane up, dodging flak, while de Blasio and the gunners fought off the remaining fighters. Hours felt like days as the Royal Flush limped away from the city, engines sputtering, fuselage scarred, crew battered but alive. "Sky clear," Bailey finally reported, voice hoarse. They had survived, but the cost was immense. Every man carried the memory of those who did not. Mechanics and medics rushed to meet them on landing. The airfield was silent, the only sound the groan of the damaged plane as it rolled to a stop. The men disembarked, exhausted, bloodied, but alive. A handful of survivors from what had been a massive formation of 274 bombers. The mission would be remembered forever as one of the bloodiest and most harrowing of the 8th Air Force. The morning of October 10th, 1943, dawned over East Anglia with a bitter chill that bit through the layers of flight suits and leather jackets. The sun struggled to rise through a low-hanging bank of gray clouds, casting a pallid, ghostly light over the fields surrounding Thorpe Abbott's airfield. For Robert Rosie Rosenthal, it was just another day, but the tension in the air felt like static, crackling with unspoken danger. As he approached the briefing room, the familiar smell of worn leather, engine oil, and stale coffee hit him, mingling with the anxiety of 60 other pilots, co-pilots, and navigators assembled for today's mission. The room hummed with nervous energy, the kind that comes from men who have seen too many friends fall from the sky. Among them were his closest comrades, Winifred "Pappy" Lewis, his co-pilot, whose hands never shook even under the greatest pressure, and Ronald Bailey, the meticulous navigator who carried maps with the same reverence others might reserve for holy texts. Major John Egan, commanding the 100th Bomb Group, began the briefing with a grim tone. "Gentlemen, today's target is Münster. Unlike previous raids on factories, today's aim point is precise: the Old Town Cathedral." A hush fell over the room, punctuated by murmurs of disbelief and tension. Many had lost close friends in earlier missions, and the thought of targeting a city with civilians in church at Sunday Mass made some hearts tighten with guilt and resolve. Rosenthal's thoughts flickered. He glanced at Bailey, who adjusted his glasses nervously. "Fuel pressure, oil pressure, everything looking good," Lewis muttered, scanning the checklist. Outside, the B-17 flying fortresses began taxiing to the runway, their massive forms looming like armored beasts ready for battle. One by one, the fortresses lifted into the sky, engines roaring against the cold morning air. Royal Flush, Rosenthal's plane, took up the rear of the formation, a position both dangerous and strategically vital. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. The men behind him relied on him to maintain the integrity of the formation. The crossing into enemy territory was tense and unrelenting. Clouds scudded across the sky, masking the sun, making visibility patchy. Bailey's voice came over the intercom. "Rosie, bearing 275, altitude 18,000 feet, avoid low-pressure zones. They'll interfere with your bomb run." Suddenly, German fighters appeared like ghosts from the horizon, Me-109 seconds slicing through the clouds, their engines screaming death. The first tracers streaked past Royal Flush. De Blasio, the rear gunner, yelled, "Bandits on R6! Open fire!" The gunners' 50 caliber Browning machine guns erupted, the deafening rattle of bullets filling the cockpit and bouncing off fuselage panels. Sparks showered as tracer rounds connected with enemy planes. 190, spinning violently, engines screaming as it plunged toward the city streets below. Outside, the city of Münster sprawled, half shrouded in smoke from previous raids. The cathedral's towering spires pierced the clouds like black fingers against the gray sky. Streets below were eerily quiet, empty but for flurries of smoke rising from defensive positions. Anti-aircraft batteries along rooftops erupted into a storm of fire, flak shells blossoming like deadly flowers in the air. Each one sent shockwaves through the B-17's fuselage, shaking instruments loose and rattling the crew's nerves. Bailey's voice, calm yet urgent, cut through the chaos. "Rosie, target corridor is clear. Bomb run in T-minus 30 seconds. Hold altitude. Steady, steady, steady." Rosenthal's hands tightened on the yoke. Every jolt, every vibration transmitted through the plane like a live wire. His knuckles whitened, but his focus never wavered. The bombs released in a perfect arc. Through the small viewing slit, the crew watched as white trails marked their descent. Below, buildings erupted in flames, glass shattered, and stone crumbled, an inferno of strategic precision and horrifying destruction. Even after releasing their bombs, danger did not lessen. The Royal Flush was now a solitary target, the fractured formation far ahead, leaving them exposed to the enemy's wrath. Me 109 seconds and 190 seconds swarmed from the clouds, their numbers overwhelming. The sky erupted in a cacophony of engines, tracer rounds, and explosions, a living battlefield in the heavens. "Starboard flank, 3, me 109 seconds, closing fast." De Blasio's voice was strained but controlled. The gunners pivoted, firing bursts that lit up the gray clouds like flares. Sparks erupted from enemy planes as bullets tore through fuselage and wings. Lewis fought with the throttles, compensating for failing engines. Left engine feathered, losing power. Rosenthal climbing to avoid flak. The fuselage shuddered violently, the roar of engines battling gravity and aerodynamic strain. Oxygen lines rattled, instruments skewed, and the plane shuddered as if alive and in pain. Flak exploded all around, black clouds blooming like deadly chrysanthemums. Shrapnel ripped through the aluminum skin, sending sparks across the cockpit. One round hit near the radio compartment, igniting a small fire. The smell of burning insulation mixed with the acrid tang of oil, filling the crew's lungs with smoke. The Royal Flush weaved desperately, banking and yawing, each movement a calculated gamble between survival and destruction. Below, Münster burned in patches, streets unrecognizable beneath clouds of smoke and fire. The cathedral's spire still stood, an ominous sentinel over the city, as if silently judging the destruction wrought by the men above. "Target locked. 15 seconds to release," Bailey barked, voice tight with focus. Bomb bay doors groaned, hydraulics whining as they opened. White trails descended, and the first wave of destruction cascaded through the city below. Flames engulfed entire blocks. The roar of the falling bombs was matched by the chaos of collapsing buildings and the shrieking wind around the plane. Every second stretched endlessly. German fighters struck again, swooping in and out, disappearing behind clouds only to reappear in sudden bursts. The Royal Flush was a battered fortress in the sky, taking hits yet refusing to fall. Sparks flew across the cockpit as bullets ripped through the fuselage, but the crew continued their fight, firing relentlessly, dodging, maneuvering, surviving. The Royal Flush limped across the gray horizon, trailing smoke from two crippled engines, each sputtering with a rhythm as unpredictable as fate itself. Below, Münster sprawled like a carefully drawn map, every street and alley illuminated intermittently by the flicker of fires started by the previous bomb runs. The cathedral spire, ominous and intact, cast a long shadow across the city, a silent witness to destruction below. "Rosie, I'm reading flak concentrations ahead, high density," Bailey shouted over the roar of failing engines. The windshield rattled violently as bursts of anti-aircraft fire erupted beneath the clouds. Each black cloud of flak seemed to stretch into infinity, a deadly lattice waiting to tear through the aluminum skin of the flying fortress. "Hold her steady," Rosenthal commanded, his voice calm despite the panic clawing at the edges of his mind. "Pappy, give me a little left rudder. No, steady, steady. Perfect. Let's thread this needle." The Royal Flush swayed violently, the nose pitching up as the remaining port engine struggled against the heavy load. The bombardier, sitting forward in the nose compartment, peered through his bomb sight, sweating into his goggles. His hands shook, gripping the sight's handles as tracers streaked across the glass. "Hold! Hold! We're lined up!" Above them, the clouds tore apart with the sudden roar of engines. A formation of 190 seconds dove from the high clouds, banking sharply to line up with the tail. De Blasio's rear guns screamed to life, tracer rounds flashing like miniature comets against the gray sky. One fighter spiraled violently, smoke streaming from its left engine, before smashing into another pursuing 190. Both disappeared in plumes of black smoke, leaving behind only the acrid tang of victory. Yet there was no time to savor it. Another wave approached me, 110 twin-engine heavy fighters, faster and heavier, with rockets strapped to their wings. Their approach was synchronized, methodical, and terrifying. "6 o'clock, low! They're closing fast!" yelled de Blasio. The tail gunners pivoted, unleashing a barrage of 50 caliber bullets, the sound inside the fuselage deafening. Sparks rained across the rear turret as one of the rockets exploded nearby, shaking the entire plane violently. Inside the cockpit, Rosenthal's hands were white-knuckled on the yoke, coordinating every movement with split-second precision. "Pappy, flare left. Bailey, mark the next waypoint turn in 15 seconds. He could feel the aircraft's weakened frame protesting, creaks and groans echoing through the fuselage like screams. Below, Münster's streets were now a mix of smoke, rubble, and fire. Civilians had fled wherever possible, though small figures could still be seen, huddled behind destroyed vehicles, clutching what few belongings they could salvage. The chaos of war was as much on the ground as it was in the sky above. "God help them," muttered Lewis under his breath. The bombardier opened the bomb bay doors once more, carefully releasing the payload. Through the small windows, bombs fell in calculated arcs, ripping through streets, igniting structures, and sending up columns of flame and smoke. The smell of burning timber, shattered masonry, and scorched earth seemed to penetrate the cockpit despite the oxygen masks. German fighters were relentless. "Starboard nose, 3 me, 109 seconds, shouted de Blasio. The gunners spun and fired, each shot calculated, precise, every bullet a prayer. 109 lost a wing, spinning uncontrollably before crashing into a burning building far below. Another was forced into a tight roll, narrowly missing the Royal Flush's tail. The flak grew heavier as they approached the city center. Black clouds of shrapnel exploded around the aircraft, sending shockwaves through the aluminum frame. Instruments rattled and sparks flew, narrowly missing Bailey, who ducked instinctively, muttering, "One hit and we're done." In the chaos, the Royal Flush's radio crackled. "Royal Flush, this is lead group. Status?" Static hissed, followed by silence. The rest of the 100th had already suffered devastating losses, their voices lost in the ether. For a moment, the crew realized they were alone. Completely, terrifyingly alone. The Royal Flush had barely cleared the city outskirts when the true nightmare began. Smoke still streamed from the damaged port engines, streaking the sky with black plumes that made the bomber a beacon to any enemy pilot with eyes sharp enough to spot it. "Fuel is dropping faster than expected," Pappy muttered, scanning the gauges. "At this rate, we might not even make the Rhine if we don't conserve." "Conserve nothing, Pappy. Keep her flying, every second counts," Rosenthal replied, eyes locked on the horizon. His mind ran calculations, engine failure, altitude adjustments, evasive maneuvers, and bomb release timing, all while the world outside was a living hell. Suddenly, from above the clouds, a formation of approximately 20 me 109 seconds emerged, diving in precise formation. Each aircraft was armed with 20mm cannons and machine guns that spat death with terrifying efficiency. The Royal Flush shuddered as tracer rounds tore through the aluminum skin. Sparks flew inside the cockpit as a near miss shook the rear fuselage. "Bandits! 6 o'clock low!" de Blasio screamed. The rear gunners spun in their turrets, unleashing torrents of lead. One fighter spiraled into a distant building, torn apart by concentrated fire. Another pilot attempted to break off, only to be shredded by simultaneous fire from the waist gunners. Bailey, peering through the navigation scopes, noticed a gap forming in the formation behind them. "Rosie, the other B-17 seconds, they're being picked off. We're the last 3 in this formation." The realization hit like a punch to the gut. They were alone. Completely, terrifyingly alone. Every decision now carried the weight of life and death. Flak batteries intensified over the outskirts of Minster. Black bursts exploded beneath and around the Royal Flush, sending shrapnel slicing through the fuselage. "Brace for impact," shouted Rosenthal, rolling the bomber to avoid a direct hit. A jagged hole appeared in the wingtip as rounds punched through metal, narrowly missing the engines. De Blasio's hands moved with machine precision. He fired at the pursuing Fu 190 seconds, scoring critical hits on two, their wings shearing under concentrated 50 caliber fire. Sparks and smoke trailed behind, but more fighters were incoming, each wave more desperate and coordinated than the last. Inside the cockpit, every crew member was on the brink. Lewis's hands shook as he monitored oil and fuel pressures. Bailey's eyes were bloodshot from scanning enemy movements. Rosenthal's jaw clenched, muscles tense, every fiber of his body working to keep the plane airborne. "We are not going down. Not today. Not while I can see the horizon," he muttered under his breath. The bombardier called out, "Target approaching. Cathedral spire is in sight. Drop altitude aligning bomb site." The crew held their collective breath. The city below was a maze of fire, smoke, and chaos. Streets burned, rubble littered intersections, and small pockets of civilians scurried toward whatever cover they could find. With a deep breath, Rosenthal stabilized the aircraft, giving the bombardier the perfect line. Bomb bay doors open. Release in 3, 2, 1. The payload fell, each bomb an arc of calculated destruction. Explosions erupted across the city, flames climbing from every impact site. The cathedral itself, tall and resilient, survived, standing as a grim sentinel over the ruined streets. Enemy fighters returned with renewed fury. Mi-110 seconds approached from the rear, firing rockets and cannons in tandem. The Royal Flush wobbled under the impacts, shrapnel tearing across the fuselage, smoke filling the cabin. 2 waist gunners were injured, shouting over the chaos. "Hold steady! Don't let them break formation," Rosenthal shouted, though in reality there was no formation left. Each maneuver was life or death, each second a gamble. Miraculously, the combination of evasive flying and the gunners' relentless fire began to thin the enemy numbers. One by one, German fighters spiraled down, hit by carefully aimed bursts from de Blasio, the waist, and nose gunners. Yet the danger was far from over. The Royal Flush was crippled, limping on damaged engines, trailing smoke like a wounded predator. Below, Münster lay in partial ruin. The fires from the bombing illuminated the night sky, casting shadows that flickered across the rooftops. The city was a living testament to the ferocity of the air raid. And above, the Royal Flush pushed on, battered, burning, but unbroken. The city of Münster shrank behind them as the Royal Flush limped away, engines coughing and smoke trailing from its wounded wings. Every meter closer to home felt like an eternity. Every second, a tightrope walk between survival and oblivion. "Altitude dropping fast," Pappy muttered, checking gauges with trembling fingers. "If we don't feather the engines properly, we'll stall." Rosenthal's hands never left the controls. "We're not stalling. Not today. Keep her straight and level. Every readout counts." The sky behind them was alive with movement. The few surviving German fighters were relentless, circling like sharks, waiting for the slightest sign of weakness. Each burst of enemy fire rocked the fuselage, sending shrapnel whistling through the cabin. "Tails exposed! Bandits! 6 o'clock!" de Blasio shouted, spinning in his turret. The 50 caliber guns cracked and spat fire into the sky. One for 190 spiraled out of control. Engine smoking, metal twisted by de Blasio's precise aim. Yet 3 more fighters dived immediately in its place. Inside the cockpit, Lewis and Bailey were working in a tense ballet of coordination. Oil pressures fluctuated dangerously, fuel lines were damaged, and hydraulics groaned under the stress. Every instrument flickered, every dial a reminder of the fragility of the machine they were commanding. "Rosie, we're losing power on port 2, Bailey yelled. "If we lose another, we'll have to ditch." "Keep her steady. I've got this. Focus on navigation, watch the terrain, and anticipate flak zones," Rosenthal replied, sweat running down his temples. Below, the German countryside was a patchwork of rivers, forests, and fields. Smoke from burning villages marked the path of other bombers, evidence of the destruction that had come before them. Every river crossing, every tree line was a potential ambush point. Flak batteries waited like predators, their black bursts cracking through the air, exploding just feet away from the limping bomber. "Brace! Incoming!" Pappy shouted as an artillery shell exploded near the left wing. The force lifted the bomber slightly, rattling everything inside. Equipment crashed, radios sparked, and the floor shuddered under the impact. Miraculously, the Royal Flush held together. Its aluminum skin was torn, its engines struggling, but it continued to fly defiant and unyielding. By the time the English coastline came into view, the crew of the Royal Flush were shadows of themselves, faces smeared with grime, eyes bloodshot and hollow, bodies trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion. "Home base ahead," Rosenthal muttered, relief barely detectable in his voice. But relief was short-lived. Anti-aircraft fire from German positions along the coastline opened again, catching them by surprise. Flak shells exploded around the bomber, sending shock waves through the fuselage. "Pappy, Bailey, hold her steady. De Blasio, cover us," Rosenthal commanded, every tone sharp, decisive. De Blasio's turret blazed. The remaining German fighters were now desperate, attempting to finish the crippled bomber before it could retreat to safety. He scored hits on 2 fighters, sending one spiraling into the sea and the other into a cloud of black smoke. The bombardier called out, "We're lined up for landing. Runway clear." Barely. Rosenthal adjusted the throttles, careful to balance the failing engines while compensating for the heavy damage to the wings. Every motion was precise, every adjustment a matter of life or death. The landing gear was lowered with extreme caution, creaking under the strain of the crippled bomber. Touchdown was rough, a violent jolt that rattled every bone in their bodies. Tires squealed against the runway as the Royal Flush skidded, sending sparks flying from the scraped fuselage. Yet, somehow, They held control. Slowly, painfully, the bomber rolled to a stop. Silence engulfed the airfield. Mechanics and medics rushed toward the Royal Flush. The crew poured out, some needing assistance, others simply collapsing on the grass. The aircraft was a wreck. Scorched wings, torn fuselage, missing panels, smoke curling from battered engines. A grim hush settled over the gathered men. This was no victory celebration. This was survival, the narrowest of margins, a reminder of the lethal cost of war. Only us? Pappy whispered, disbelief in his voice. Rosenthal nodded, swallowing hard. We made it, but everyone else. His voice trailed off, heavy with grief. The Royal Flush and her crew had returned from the impossible. Of the 130 men involved in the missions over Munster that day, 37 had been killed and 93 captured. The surviving crew were marked forever by the experience. Their faces haunted, their spirits tested beyond imagination. The 100th Bomb Group earned the grim nickname, the Bloody 100th, a testament to both their courage and the horrific toll they had endured. For the men of the Royal Flush, the world had changed forever in those few hours. Every glance, every touch, every sound a reminder of survival against impossible odds.